Flying without wings. October 2005. I never wanted this for myself. I never thought I'd be here. When I was 11, I didn't think to myself, in 10 years, I'll be home on a Friday night, dead. When I first met him, he was funny and unassuming. I had no clue he'd be the one to send me to the upper room. But that's usually how these stories go. It's the ones closest to you you have to watch out for. Jesus knew Judas and I thought I knew Vaughn. The separation and sadness I felt the moment I realized I wasn't in my body any longer was overwhelming. I slowly ascended, and as I looked down, I saw Vaughn over my lifeless body, sodomizing it. When he finished, he noticed that the back of my body stopped rising and falling. I watched him struggle to get my 230 pounds dead body back into the bed fully. He made sure to take his condom, its wrapper, and the BK cup with alcohol mixed with date rape drugs. The last image I had was my body under the covers and Vaughn slipping out of my apartment like a thief in the night. In what was like a blink of an eye, I found myself in a dark room. This room was set up like a security station with CCTVs all around. The closer I floated towards these bright screens, the better I could see what was on them. In each screen was a different event in my life. One screen in particular caught my attention. I was laying in a hospital bed, and someone unfamiliar was on the right side crying. I immediately thought, this must be how I die, and without intentionally doing it, I was drawn into that event's timeline. I looked down at my presumably unconscious body and felt sorry for myself. The aerial view didn't offer much information besides what the man on the right side of my hospital bed was wearing. He had on a white t-shirt and blue jeans. He was pleading, "Please bring her back, please." Sometimes people cry because they actually feel remorse, and other times criminals cry because they don't want to get caught. In October 2005, on a Saturday morning, I woke up groggy and disoriented. I went to the bathroom and I was bleeding from my rectum. I had no recollection at all about what happened on Friday. Vaughn was my boyfriend and my brother's close friend. We were dating for 3 months, and then he ghosted me. On the surface, I rationalized that he just wasn't that into me, but truly I internalized the pain of rejection, not knowing that something more sinister happened to me than being ghosted by my brother's friend. He literally killed me and went into hiding. But you see, I wouldn't find out those details until 13 years later. In between that time, a lot happened. Remember the hospital event? Well, I did experience that. I met Carl in 2008. By 2010, I was expecting. Carl wasn't excited and even introduced the idea of getting an abortion. I wasn't in favor, but that shouldn't have been a surprise to him. He and I had this conversation before the expected unexpectedly happened. On June 17, 2010, I had an ultrasound. That's when I was told I was having a girl. A week later, Carl and I had a falling out. He let me know that he and I would never be anything. I was just some girl trying to trap him by having a baby he definitely did not want. After that emotionally crushing discourse, I cried myself to sleep. I felt so hopeless. This was yet another person mad at me. Damned if you do and damned if you don't. My younger sister moved out a month and a half prior. She was expecting too. While I worked and all of my money went towards the rent and utilities, she was approved for food stamps. I was not. So I only ate at work, leftover nachos or hot dogs from the grill getting ready to be thrown out. At home, on occasion, I would make a turkey sandwich and eat. My sister complained about that. She complained about it so much we had an argument. Then she called our father and he bought her a one-way ticket to his house. For those reasons, I was depressed. I was having a baby I essentially couldn't afford because after paying my bills, I literally couldn't feed myself. My siblings and father deemed me difficult to get along with, and the guy I shared my body with over the span of 2 years told me in so many words that I'm only good for one thing. After Carl told me how he despised me, I had a dream. But this wasn't like any other dream. It felt so real. Except I've never had a dream where I had an aerial view of myself with clear, conscious thoughts. I brushed it off because why would Carl be at my hospital bedside crying? He hates me, and all I wanted to do was love him and be loved by him. So I carried on like normal even though I was crushed inside. I was an assistant manager for a convenience store gas station, and my manager was fired, leaving me to become the interim store manager. I believe my pregnancy played a role in me not being promoted into the position, but I wasn't upset about it. The regional manager wanted to fill the store manager position quickly, so she decided to have the former assistant manager of the store come back. She was promoted to store manager at another store. This replacement manager didn't want me to be her assistant. She wanted her friend to be her assistant. So she found passive-aggressive ways to push me out, like emailing the board of directors and regional to find out how soon she could get me to take maternity leave, being late to relieve me or scheduling me without a cashier, and more notably, scheduling me by myself on the 4th of July for 6 hours. This was beyond dangerous. I was a few days shy from my 3rd trimester, and I was in a gas station by myself handling money from the registers and the ATM. It was a busy holiday. The store sits right off the interstate. Anything could have happened. I was exhausted running back and forth from the office doing paperwork and counting money to going to the registers to ring up customers, then cleaning and stocking the busy store. The week prior to this busy Sunday, Carl called and said that he was talking to his mother and that he wanted us to work on being good co-parents. He offered to cook dinner for me. Even though I was burnt out from work, I didn't want to seem difficult by canceling. On the 30-minute drive to his place after a grueling workday, it was the first time I was happy to feel those little kicks in my abdominal area. I was apprehensive the whole time because I suffered a miscarriage years prior. I didn't want to get my hopes up, but we were nearing the 3rd trimester, almost out of the danger zone. I was elated. I got to his place and he had dinner ready. He made mashed potatoes, greens, barbecue chicken, and dressing. He gave me something to drink. It was supposed to be sweet tea, but it tasted bitter. I couldn't finish it. Before leaving, he said it would be okay to tell him the baby's gender. I told him we were having a girl, and he cried. The night ended on a sour note because I suggested hyphenating her last name versus it solely being his last name. I got home, took a shower, and knocked out. I was extremely tired. I slept from 8 p.m. until 7 a.m. when I was awoken by my phone. It was the manager, calling me on my off day, wondering about something her night shift did. I left that store at 2 p.m. in a clean and orderly fashion. Anything after that was on her, so I told her that and hung up. I got up to use the bathroom and felt a drop in my stomach. I didn't want to think the worst, so I rationalized that Chanel was doing something new in the limited space she had in my uterus. A few hours later, my mother came to my door and said, "Come on, let's go to Macy's and get some stuff for the baby." I was still tired, but I reluctantly got ready to go. In the process, my mother got a phone call, and that was my cue to take a nap. I went into my mother's room. She moved in after my sister moved out, and I did just that. Nap. Roughly 30 minutes later, I was waking up from my sleep. I remember my eyes still being closed, but I could hear on the TV, "Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?" playing. When I opened my eyes, I wanted to shout out the answer, but I couldn't. My thoughts were clear, but no words could come out of my mouth. I quickly touched my face and moved the left and right sides of my mouth. Okay, good. It's not Guillain-Barré syndrome, but something is wrong. I can't speak. My mother came in the room and asked if I was ready to go. I just looked at her. I couldn't mumble or make a sound, so tears welled up in my eyes as she raced to the side of the bed. She said she was going to call 911, and I flailed my arms. I didn't think things were that bad. I finally forced "I'm okay" out, but it took rather long due to the stammering. When I was able to speak without stammering, I called Carl and said, "She can have your name," and hung up. My mother then took me to the ER to be checked out. In the ER, the doctor ordered a nurse to use the fetal Doppler machine to check my baby's heart rate. When she couldn't, the doctor came and tried. He couldn't find it, so he sent me to have an ultrasound. The volume was up on the ultrasound and the screen was behind me. I looked at the screen and saw that she wasn't moving. I also didn't hear her heartbeat. "We're going to wheel you back to triage and the doctor will go over the results with you," said the tech. The doctor didn't have to tell me. I already knew. "She's not moving and she hasn't moved all day. I worked too hard yesterday. This is my fault." I cried and blamed myself. "Chanel is fine. She's just sleeping," my mother said. Unfortunately, her optimism wasn't comforting. She was this positive when I had a miscarriage in 2006, but I knew despite the doctor saying it was a threatened miscarriage that the pregnancy ended even before I knew it started. Same script, different cast. The doctor came in. "I'm sorry, Miss Baxter. We couldn't detect any fetal tones." Everything after he said that, I tuned out. My worst fear was realized. I was happy about being your mother yesterday. Now you're gone. Before I was admitted into labor and delivery, I called Carl and said, "She's gone." I hung up and cried some more. By the time I made it to labor and delivery, it was July 6th. I was having another episode where I couldn't talk. To my surprise, Carl came to my room. I was motionless and mute. With his white t-shirt and blue jeans on, he sat at the right side of my bed and pleaded, "Please bring her back, please." That moment felt surreal as I remembered my dream. Well, what I know now was a premonition. It wasn't me who was dead in the hospital. It was Chanel. My premonition was only possible because I died at 21 and saw this part of my life's story when I was on the other side. That fact was kind of hard for even me to wrap my head around. It left me with more questions than answers. It meant that our lives are already written. Knowing that shook me to my core. I'm 38 now. When I talk about my life, there are 3 villains in my story. I only told you about 2. One of my lessons to learn is to be careful what you drink. You never know who wants to violate you by slipping you a drug or who wants to poison you with an herbal abortifacient. They say the truth shall set you free. Well, this is my truth, and now I'm flying without wings.